I'm Brian Van from SportBikeTrackGear.com, and today we're going to install our Ohlins TTX rear shock on our 2014 STG RoadRacingWorld.com Honda CBR1000RR project bike. This is a key component to any track motorcycle. Stock suspensions come a long way, but it's really set up for people, well, quite frankly, typically a little bit lighter than me. I'm a little over 200 pounds without my gear on. I need my stuff sprung heavier, and of course, the performance of the Ohlins product is so consistent, and there's a wider range of adjustment that really allows you to get this thing dialed in from track to track. So, to begin, what do we need to do? Well, first thing we got to do is source the shock. We've done that. It is absolutely gorgeous, just like all the Ohlins product. It adds a lot of bling to the bike, which is a nice benefit on the other side. Still, the most important part is the performance of the product. What do we need tool-wise to perform this? We need jack stands to support the motorcycle from the foot pegs, because we need to remove the rear tire and remove the rear stand from the swing arm to allow the swing arm to drop so we're able to get the stock unit out and the new Ohlins unit in. Tool-wise, very simple hand tools. We've got a ratchet, a couple of sockets, a couple of wrenches, very simple stuff. To begin this, what we need to do is remove the lower fairing from the motorcycle, because we need to be able to get in there and access the mounting bolts, and then of course get the shock in and out. On our Honda, that's pretty easy to do. We got a couple of 8mm fasteners with some deuce fasteners up front. All right, I've got the lower fairing off, I've got the rear tire off, and then watching me do that again, it's kind of like watching paint dry. Pretty simple stuff. And now we're ready to tackle removing the shock. What I want to do is, before I install the jack stands, I'm going to go ahead and break loose all of the fasteners and get myself in a position where we're ready to move forward. Just get the nuts loose. And you'll find that you can break them loose most times without even having the backup wrench on there. Like so. One of the bolts here is reversed. So we're going to switch up sockets and wrenches for this one. And once we've done this, we're going to be ready to get in there with our jack stands. Because this one is an oddball right now, I'm going to go ahead and just slide this nut off all the way. Put that back around so everything is in the same direction. Move our shock out of the way and make room to come in with the jack stand. This is a great shop tool from our friends at Pitbull. They are adjustable up and down for the height of the bike. So they're very versatile. You can use these off points in the frame to support the motorcycle. If you happen to have the rear sets, as we do with these Vortex rear sets with fixed pegs, you can support the motorcycle here. If you've got a stock bike and you still have those folding pegs, okay, remember, the pegs are spring loaded, okay? If you try to support the motorcycle by that peg, it is quite likely not going to work. What I found on the stock bikes, a lot of times, if you can get in far enough, the inner portion of that bracket will allow you to support the motorcycle from it. So you've got to really make sure you look at that closely and be sure you've got a good fixed point. Okay, we've got that in place now. Now we just need to get all the nuts off. We're going to slide the bolts out and begin to work the shock out of the bike. Okay, I've got all the nuts off and we're ready to remove the shock. Pretty easy to do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the back of the swing arm like so, and relieve the pressure on that bolt. And from there, you'll see that the swing arm is able to pivot freely. Okay, now we're going to come down here and do the same thing. Work the swing arm just a little bit. Now we're going to finish taking the fasteners out. Taking the linkage off, and the reason for that is I want to have a look at the pivot and see if it requires the actual bearing in there and see if it requires any additional lubricant. I've seen many times where a brand new bike, they're kind of dry on this. There's our stock unit, straight from Honda. I'm going to go ahead and put that off to the side. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to slide off the suspension right here, and I'm going to look at the amount of grease in there. Actually looks fantastic. Okay, let's say that yours does not. I'll show you what you need to do. Got a little synthetic grease here, Mobil 1. Put just a little bit on the end of this screwdriver, like so. I find this a great way to lubricate this, because if you just wipe it on the bushing and slide it in, it'll end up pushing itself off as it goes past the seals. Just go ahead and wipe that around. I'm not going to bother to do the front portion, because the way this one looked, I know that one's going to be okay. It'll certainly get us through the next time that the shop needs to be removed and serviced. Now we're going to go ahead and make sure the bushing's clean. Slide that through like so. Go ahead and go on the inside. Wipe off any excess. We're ready to grab our Ohlins unit. This has a remote preload adjuster that we're going to be bolting to the subframe. I'll show you that as we move through the project. But for now, we need to feed that up from the bottom. It's going to come up first, followed by the shock itself. So, slides right into place, exactly as I would have expected. Line up that bolt hole, and we're going to let that kind of hold this into place. From there, we need to gather our fasteners and get the suspension linkage back in place, and we'll tighten all of the nuts. Okay, I've got all of the fasteners in, except one, the last one. The last one is always the hardest one. The reason is you need to be able to pivot the swing arm up and down until you get it lined up just right so you can pass the final bolt through the bushing. Here's what I like to do. Got that suspension link right in place. I tightened up this bolt, not all the way, but just enough to hold the dog bones in place, right? Now, I've got my pit bowl stand back in here, and I'm able to lift this in place, look through the hole here. There is the bushing. Everything looks to be lined up pretty well, and I've got that passed right back through, no problem. Now here's the point where we decide if we're going to use a torque wrench or not. If you've watched my videos, you know that I'm pretty confident with torque, a lot of mechanical experience in my past. So I'm going to pass on the torque wrench, but I'm going to make sure I've got all the fasteners torqued evenly. You'll see too that I have all of the fasteners lined up so all the nuts are facing out in case we need to remove this at the track and you want to be able to get it done without any real restriction. I've got it set up so that we can go ahead and do that. Another thing that I can do right now is I can go ahead and remove these jack stands. Give me a little better access to the fasteners. And we can use just the pit bowl rear stand. Take the weight off there one at a time. they don't fall off the table. Rag out of the way, and there we go. Now I've definitely got a cleaner access to the fasteners. I'm going to use my 3/8 ratchet, combination wrench to torque all of this stuff down. These are all lock nuts that Honda uses here. Most manufacturers do the same thing. No need for Loctite or anything like that. The fastener itself is meant to lock itself in place. I'm just going to use the 3/8 ratchet. I'll repeat that same process throughout the rest of the fasteners on the suspension link. I'm going to put my tire back on, get the lower fairing on, and when we come back, we're going to be working on mounting up that remote preload adjuster to the subframe. Okay, that's it. The last thing I had to do was mount up that remote preload adjuster, and I've got that finished. If you want to come on over here and show you how I did this. There's a supplied bracket that was included with the shock from Ohlins. I mounted that to the passenger peg mounting point on the right side or the brake side of the motorcycle. I mounted it using the forward-most hole. I felt that kept it out of the way. I got it angled out just a little bit so you can have good access to it. Free rein here of the tire in terms of the suspension travel up and down, no worries. Word of the wise, you may have to, okay, remove your tail section of your seat and possibly even spread apart the subframe to get that fastener in there, or at least lift up that electronic tray. I was fortunate in all my spare stuff because I save every nut and bolt that I remove that I don't need to reuse for a project. I had a fastener that was the right length. I was able to get it in there without doing any of that, and it made my life a whole lot easier. Okay, we still have a long way to go in terms of setup with this. We need to get, once we have the forks done, we got to get a baseline sag setting in it, right? We're going to check the clickers at the track and see where they're at, feed a baseline into it, ride the bike, and dial it in. But the install is done. We've got the stock shock removed. The Ohlins TTX is in place. All we need to do now is get that 30mm cartridge in there. That's going to be my next suspension project. For now, this is the Ohlins TTX shock install on the 2014 STG RoadRacingWorld.com Honda CBR1000RR